Hello, welcome back to the channel. So, if there's one question that I get asked more than any other, whether it's from patients, from people in the comments, or even friends and family, it's this. What should I actually be getting checked? And I think the reason people ask it so much is that the standard answer they get from the healthcare system is, well, often pretty rubbish. You go to your doctor, maybe you get a cholesterol test, maybe you get a blood pressure reading, and you're told everything is fine. And you leave not really knowing much more than when you walked in. And look, I'm not sure about you, but this has been the experience of many of my family members. So today, what I want to do is give you a really useful answer to that question. 10 routine blood tests, things that we check literally every single day, all of them completely free on the NHS, all of them requestable from your GP, but whether they do that for you or not is a different story. I'm hoping the vast majority of doctors would do them because, in my opinion, this is what you pay your taxes for. And between these 10 blood tests, they give you an extraordinary amount of information about what is actually going on inside your body right now. Your metabolic health, your heart disease risk, your liver, your kidneys, your energy levels, your inflammation. These are not niche private biomarkers that cost huge amounts of money. These are, pretty standard NHS tests that are available to almost everybody. And together, they paint a picture that could genuinely change how you think about your health and catch problems years before they cause symptoms. If you watch these videos regularly, then you'll know that I always say that the diseases that kill the most people, like heart disease and type 2 diabetes and stroke and chronic kidney disease, they are almost always silent in their early stages. There are no symptoms. You feel completely fine. And by the time symptoms do appear, the disease has often been developing for years and years, sometimes decades. And I see this every single day in the A&E, people arriving with the consequences of diseases that were preventable, that were detectable years earlier, and that were never picked up because, well, literally nobody looked. And blood tests are one of the most powerful tools that we have for looking earlier. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first one is your HbA1c, or A1c if you're across the pond. And what this one measures is your average blood sugar over roughly the past 3 months. And the reason it's so important is that it gives you a window into your metabolic health that a single glucose reading just can't. Your red blood cells have a lifespan of around 3 months, and glucose sticks to them over that time. So your HbA1c is essentially a long-term average rather than just a snapshot, if that makes sense. It is the primary test that we use to diagnose prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. It is really important, but here's what most people don't realize. The risk doesn't start at the point of diagnosis. Studies show the cardiovascular risk starts rising well before HbA1c reaches that diabetic threshold. Even values in the upper end of the normal range can signal that metabolic dysfunction is already underway. It is just one big spectrum, and all of us are on this spectrum somewhere. And getting this checked every year, if you can, means that you catch the trend early when lifestyle changes can completely reverse that direction. The second test is your fasting glucose. Now, this is a really simple blood sugar test taken after you haven't eaten for at least 8 hours. On its own, it is quite useful, but it becomes even more powerful when you look at it alongside your HbA1c, because together they give you a much more complete picture of your metabolic health. Fasting glucose can identify something called impaired fasting glucose, which is basically a warning sign that sits between normal and diabetic. It's a sign that the body's ability to manage blood sugar is starting to be stressed out a bit, and catching it at that stage is really valuable because at that point you still have a very wide window to intervene, because it reflects your body's real-time glucose regulation, which can reveal problems a bit earlier than long-term averages. Number 3 is your lipid profile, and this is probably the most commonly requested out of all of these tests in this video. Now, a standard lipid profile gives you your total cholesterol, your LDL cholesterol, your HDL cholesterol, and your triglycerides, those 4 things. Now, I've talked in other videos about why a standard LDL cholesterol on its own is an incomplete structure, and I stand by that. But even within a standard lipid profile, there is much more information than most people are told about. The triglyceride to HDL ratio, in particular, is something that I think everyone should know about. All you do is you divide your triglyceride number by your HDL number. A ratio below 1 is good news. Above 2 starts to be concerning. And other studies show this simple calculation is one of the better predictors of insulin resistance and cardiovascular risk that you can get from a standard panel. Yet, most people are just handed their results and told the cholesterol is normal without anybody mentioning it. They'll say it's normal compared to the average person, so there's nothing to worry about. But the health of the average person in the Western world, that is not a reassuring thing. Test number 4 is your liver function test, this time what we call LFTs in the UK. And these typically include a set of enzymes called ALT, AST, ALP, and GGT, gamma GT. And these essentially measure how well your liver is functioning and whether there are signs of stress or damage. And the reason I think this is so important to include is that fatty liver disease, formerly called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, now affects roughly 1 in 3 adults in many Western countries. Almost 1 in 3. That is crazy to think about. And it's driven largely by poor diet, insulin resistance, sedentary lifestyles, visceral fat, and all of these common things I always talk about. In its early stages, it causes absolutely no symptoms, but slightly elevated liver enzymes on a blood test can literally be the first and only clue that something is developing. If it's caught early, then fatty liver is often completely reversible through lifestyle change. But if it's left undetected, then it can progress over years to fibrosis and even more serious liver disease, and in some cases, cancer as well. Your GP can check these enzymes as just part of a routine screen. We check them literally all the time. It's one of the most common tests that we do. The 5th test is your kidney function test. Now, specifically something called creatinine and your eGFR, estimated glomerular filtration rate. Now, creatinine is a waste product that your kidneys filter out of the blood. If the kidneys aren't working as efficiently as they should be, then creatinine starts to build up. Now, eGFR essentially is a calculation based on your creatinine that estimates how well your kidneys are filtering blood per minute. It's a bit complicated, but essentially, this number is how well your kidneys are functioning. And early chronic kidney disease, again, has essentially no symptoms whatsoever. You can lose a significant proportion of your kidney function and feel absolutely nothing. It's also worth knowing that your kidney function is really closely tied to your blood pressure and cardiovascular health. They all affect each other, and deterioration in one tends to accelerate deterioration in the other. So, knowing your eGFR gives you a baseline and lets you track whether things are stable over time. Okay then, so your full blood count is number 6 on the list, and this is again one of the most commonly ordered tests in medicine, and for good reason, to be honest. It gives you an enormous amount of information in one go. It measures your red blood cells, your white blood cells, your platelets. It can detect anemia, which is one of the most common causes of persistent fatigue, and it's frequently missed. It gives us clues about infection and inflammation. It can flag up certain blood disorders and cancers. It can tell you about your hemoglobin level, which is the protein in red blood cells that carries oxygen around the body, which has a direct impact on how energetic you feel and how well your body is functioning at your basic physiological level. So, if you've been feeling exhausted and you haven't had a full blood count done recently, then this is one of the first places to start. Now, closely related to the FBC, at number 7 is your ferritin. And I want to give this its own moment, because it's probably the most underdiagnosed cause of fatigue in people who look otherwise healthy on their standard blood test. Ferritin, we don't always do all the time, but it is a really important blood test. It measures your iron stores, not the iron currently circulating in your body, but the iron that your body has in reserve, the stores of iron. And you can have a completely normal hemoglobin, a completely normal FBC, and yet have a ferritin that is critically low. At that level, your body is running on empty in terms of its iron stores, and the symptoms like fatigue and brain fog and poor exercise tolerance and hair loss, these can be really significant. It's particularly common in women with heavy periods, in vegetarians and vegans, and in endurance athletes as well, like triathletes or long-distance runners or cyclists. It's a really simple add-on to a blood test, And it's the kind of thing that when it comes back low and it gets treated, people often feel dramatically better within weeks. It can have a massive impact on their lives. Test number 8 is all about your thyroid function now, usually reported as TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, and it's sometimes reported alongside something called T4 as well. Now, your thyroid is a small gland in your neck that regulates your metabolism, your energy levels, your body temperature, and also your mood as well. And problems with your thyroid are extremely common, particularly in women, and you know these are notorious for being missed for years and years because the symptoms are so easy to attribute to other things. Things like fatigue and weight changes and brain fog, feeling cold all the time, low mood, all of these get put down to stress or getting older or not sleeping well. And sometimes, yes, that is exactly what it is, but sometimes it is a thyroid that is quietly underperforming, and a simple blood test that picks it up in minutes is really worth doing. Both overactive and underactive thyroid, which my dad had, these both carry long-term health consequences if left untreated, including effects on your heart rhythm, your bone density, and your overall cardiovascular risk. Number 9 is your vitamin D level. Now, if you live in the UK, then this one is particularly relevant because deficiency here is extremely common. It's estimated that around 1 in 5 people in the UK has a low vitamin D level, and in winter and spring, that proportion is even higher. Now, vitamin D is made in the skin in response to sunlight, and in a country where we have limited sunshine for, well, it seems like most of the year and where most people work indoors, this is something that we have to take really seriously. Low vitamin D is associated with fatigue, with muscle weakness, with low mood and impaired immune function. It also has a role in your bone health that becomes more and more important as we age. It's really worth getting your level checked and knowing your baseline, but to be honest, in the UK specifically, official guidance recommends that most adults consider taking 10 micrograms or 400 international units IU of vitamin D every single day during the autumn and winter, which is when the sun isn't strong enough to produce it in the skin. While people at higher risk of deficiency, such as those with limited sun exposure over the year or people with darker skin, these people are advised to take it all year round. And finally, in number 10, we've got something called CRP, C-reactive protein, and this is basically a marker of inflammation in the body.